welcome back to Online Sunday School. It's great to be back with all of you. Today, we want to give thanks for Pastor Tim. Today is his last Sunday here at Albany First Christian Church. We want to say thank you for all the wonderful things he has done. And we want to wish him the very best in the next steps of his journey. May he know that we love him. Today, our story is a special story. It's special to Pastor Tim. It's the story of Esther, of a young woman who was very brave. Well, with that, let's head on in to our story. Here's our story. Esther and the Very Brave Plan. Written by Tim Thornborough. Illustrated by Jennifer Davidson. We all make plans. We make a plan to see friends. We make a plan to go on a journey. We make a plan to go swimming or have a picnic. This is a story from the Bible about some horrible men who made a horrible plan to get rid of God's people. But it's also the story about a brave woman and about how God had another plan to rescue God's people. In the land of Persia, in the great, great city of Susa, there lived a great and powerful king. The king was rich and proud, but the king had a problem. To go with his beautiful gold and his beautiful palaces, the king wanted a beautiful queen. So the proud king made a proud plan. He ordered the most beautiful women in Persia to come to his palace so he could choose one to be his queen. Esther lived with her cousin Mordecai in the great, great city of Susa. They were God's people, and they lived in the land of Persia along with many others who loved and served God. Now God had made Esther a very beautiful woman. So when the king saw her, he chose her to be queen. The proud king's plan had worked. But the king wasn't the only one with a plan. God had a plan too. And God was working to make it happen. One day Mordecai heard two wicked men making a wicked plan to get rid of the king. Mordecai went and told the king, and the wicked men with the wicked plan were stopped. The king was saved. What Mordecai did was written in a very special book. This was all part of God's plan, and God was working to make it happen. Now, Haman was the king's special helper. Haman hated God's people, but he hated Mordecai most of all. I will get rid of Mordecai, he said, and I will get rid of all God's people as well. So Haman made a horrible plan. Haman said to the king, "There are people in your kingdom who love and serve God and who do not obey you, you should make a law that they should be all killed. And the king believed what Haman told him and made the law. God's people were in terrible, terrible danger. Oh no. But God still had a plan to save God's people, and God was working, working, working to make it happen. But how? How would God do it? Mordecai heard about the horrible plan and sent a message to Esther. We are all in terrible danger. Maybe this is the reason that you have become queen for such a time as this. So brave Esther made a very brave plan. A plan to speak to the king. And it was all part of God's plan, that God was working, working, working to keep God's people safe. Now in the land of Persia, no one could just walk up and talk to the king, not even the queen. But brave Esther put on her royal robes and walked, trembling, in to see him. She knew it was a very dangerous thing to do. But the king looked at her and smiled. So Esther invited the king and Haman to come to a special dinner the next day. That night, the king could not sleep, and he asked for his special book to be read to him. His servant told the story of how Mordecai had saved him from the wicked men with the wicked plan. So the king ordered that Mordecai should be led through the streets on his royal horse, and that everyone should bow down to Mordecai. And he told Haman to lead the horse. It was all part of God's plan. And God was working, working, working to save God's people. At the banquet with Queen Esther that night, the king and Haman had a wonderful time. The king said to Esther, "Ask me anything, and I will give it to you." Esther said, "Someone has ordered that I and all my people should be killed. Please save us." The king was angry. "Who did this?" Esther said, "It's Haman." Haman was taken away, and Mordecai was made the king's special helper. God's people were saved, and they had a huge party to celebrate. This was God's plan. God had been working, working, working to rescue God's people. God's plans come true, even when we can't see how. And even when things seem to be going wrong, God is always working, working, working to rescue God's people so that they can celebrate with Him forever. That's our story. Well, in our story today, Esther was indeed brave. She was brave, standing up to the king to help her people. Being brave is hard. It means sometimes it's doing what's right, even when it's scary or it's hard or it doesn't always make us popular. But that's what it means to be brave. And let us be people like Esther, like Pastor Tim, who dare to be brave. We'll know that we love you, and we'll see you next time.